Welcome to Warblog. This is another development video um, on surveillance operations. So I'm at the next stage. I mean, I say that cautiously because I've done it, but I think there's going to be a few things that need sort of fiddling about and sorting. So let's just have a look at this mission, in which I've sort of started doing it. So obviously there's Boko Haram units around here somewhere. So we've got to find them. Now, it's still early days, so I don't want to set anything in stone. So I know that there's going to be some around here somewhere, but I don't actually know where they're going to be because they are random. But I think there's going to be some around here. So what I do is I pull up the magic fantastic button and click that. There's no real indication it's been clicked, you just got to have faith. Now I'm in surveilling mode. I would know that otherwise because all the enemy units would have vanished, but in this case they haven't. So I'm going to put if I put my aircraft in there, oops, it still happens. So I can't see anything because there's nothing there. Now, there's basically they have 30% chance of spotting something. So I'm not sure really of the maths, but it's such that I can twiddle with that. That's sort of quite easy, and there is still open scope for twiddling, which is a different thing from the development, because I've got factors in. I've got one factor that says if it's jungle, then this factor takes effect, so it's -20, and you've got a maximum chance any time of 60% in a jungle. So you're never going to have much. You're never going to have more than 60% chance. But here we got 30% chance, 60% chance, 90% chance. Now we could put that in there and that gives 120% chance, but because the maximum is 90, that would be a waste. We're never going to get more than 90 because that is the absolute maximum. Other terrains are going to be harder to spot in. So for example, as I said, the jungle, it would be a maximum of 60, but it might even be lower. So I'm going to go through and sort of say, well, if it's mountains, it's going to be this much of a detriment. For example, in order to get say 60 in, say, jungle that had a -40 factor, I would have to put in 120, because -40 would make that 80, which would then be reduced down to 60. But if I put in 90, that would be 50, which would be less than 60. So it's sort of a bit weird. But again, I'm going to actually take a couple of these units out. So there's also the balance on how many units are used. So for example, if there are only 4 units, I might want to say, well, I'm only going to use 3. Well, if I've only got 3, if I've only got 4, I might choose to have 2 lots of 2 as opposed to 1 lot of 3 or 1 lot of 4. But in this instance, because I want to maximize the odds and I haven't twiddled with the variables and the factors, I'm just going to sort of run the surveillance mission like that. Fingers crossed, there's some actual Boko Haram units there. Yeah, well, there's 1. So I've now run that surveillance mission. Now, the only thing to say is that there might actually be some other units in there, but I rolled over the result. You don't know what the result is. That it could be that there is actually another unit there. You will never be 100% sure. There's always that variance. There's always that variable that's not going to tell you, because I don't think that is ever going to be the case. But when you pretty much think that you've got the odds in your favour, then you can realistically expect that to be the case. So if we go back to the game, we'll now see that we've identified that unit. So Now we know that that came from me actually doing, I think that was where I did my surveillance operation. So we know we've looked in these hexes with our drones. Now we could then sort of turn around maybe and look at this hex, which would give us a sort of a join. So if we look in that hex, which is near Dur, so we know that's another hotspot. Let's use both our drones. And there's one unit in there as well, although we only found one unit. So in our surveillance operations, we found 2 units. That means now that our ground units can now have some sort of idea of what they want to be doing. I'm trying to balance this up to make it kind of a game. I keep saying this, and I never do it myself, but I really think that, to play this, to sort of say, right, I want to play this and I want to get the sort of some sense of what's actually happening, because I never really do that because I'm too busy actually making the game, so I'm sort of doing that anyway. But if you were to play this, what I'm saying is I think you should print it out. You print the map out and know where you've done, because I can't remember where I've done any of this operation. I'm not going to keep any record keeping sort of in the game itself. So you would actually have to sort of figure out, because we put our operation there, so we know we sort of checked these hexes and we know we sort of checked these hexes, so that gives us all of this checked, where we can actually use the best thing ever, the drawing tool. So now we know that we've checked these hexes. Yep, that's right, because we did something there and something there. So we don't know what's in there. So these are areas where we don't know. Well, I mean, obviously there, we don't know. We don't know there. So we don't know here. We don't know anything along this road. So again, travelling down this road is not certain. So we might have said, well, we want to sort of run that. We want to clear this road first. And so what I'm still trying to do is to balance up how that works. For example, I might want to say, well, I want one drone to be more effective. But the thing is, I might up the values. I might up the base value. I might make it say, instead of 10 times its face value, which is 3, which they shouldn't actually be 3 3s though, because they're actually drones. They should be 3 zeros, 3 0 3 0 3 0, etc. Not because these whatever they are, I don't even know what they are. MiGs, J7s, whatever they are. These J7s are 3 attack, 3 air combat, but drones are not 3 air combat. So yeah, so it's all fairly fiddly. There's one other scenario, but I'm not going to even attempt to find it now, but it's a Vietnam scenario, but they don't have drones. But what this is also geared up for is recce. So if you've got a ground recce unit, reconnaissance unit, they can do the same thing, and it works in exactly the same way, but I haven't tested it. But I'm hoping that this will add another dimension to the game, but will also facilitate an easier way of approaching the problem, rather than having to visit every hex. Now we're not certain of what's what. So if we sort of just, now aircraft can't do surveillance, so that's that. Now if we're going down this road, Oops, I didn't mean to do it that way. I meant to do the 2 mechanized down here. Oh, well, it doesn't matter because I'm not playing for real. Okay, so we'll end the turn, but now the Boko Haram units can move around. So let's sort of run away. Etc, etc. Right. Now, we sort of know where we've checked, but we haven't got a permanent record of that. Actually, I'm not sure. Let me just think. No, I thought it kept it in memory. I have actually looked at ways of keeping the drawing thing in memory, but it's fairly fiddly complex and probably not really worth it overall. But anyway, so we've got the possibility of some being over here, so we've got to sort of remember where we searched. Now, I'm pretty sure we searched there and there. So this is possibly here is an open area. So I'm gonna search there just because I sort of want to cover that ground. I'm going to search there. Wow. Okay, so where were they? Right, so that makes sense, doesn't it? Because I searched there, which is not in the scope, and I searched there. Let me just do this properly. This is the problem, you see. If you don't actually do proper map keeping, you're going to have this exact same problem. I mean, I didn't actually know where they were or anything, but I know this is sort of a hot zone because it's the Madara Mountains and the Sambisa Forest. They are the two areas, so there's twice as much really down here as there is sort of in the Lake Chad area. But I'm pretty sure that I did this hex, because it's next to there, and this hex, which would have meant these hexes were included, and these hexes were included. So obviously, I'd have to look at the video to see whether I'm right on there. So obviously we missed that one out. So then we did this hex. We would have been better off doing that one, because that would have got us the same thing. Or actually, it would have been better off doing that one. As the one that was in, but they would have covered this one as well. This one. So obviously there was some overlapping in there. And just for the hell of it, let's do some here, maybe here, because we know that there's something around Lake Chad area. Now remember, I could put it down to 1 and it would only give me a 30% chance. That shouldn't have shown. Wow. Well, there's a lot in that area. So we've used our drones to find these things. Now, I am sort of a little cautious on how I want this to work. But the fact is that I can twiddle with the variables. I don't want to make it too easy to just sort of like use the drones and find everything effortlessly. So maybe sort of maximize or reducing the maximum load down to, say, well, I don't know, maybe 70% maximum in even the best conditions, because I sort of want there to be some degree of variance in that, because that looks like pretty much probably everything that were in those stacks. Whereas if we'd had 70, maybe one of these wouldn't have been shown, and when we got there we would have had a bit of a surprise. Oh, that's right, these are all swamp. And the other thing to bear in mind is that we can't go into this swamp with our motorized and mechanized, which is I'm going to have to put some infantry in. I remember looking at that yesterday. But when they are in here, again, what we've found is we used our air surveillance to find them, and we're using our air power to destroy them. And I think that's all quite interesting, really, because that sort of is how it's working. I haven't got the windows open now, but if you look at the articles on the Nigerian Guardian, they actually say that they're using the air power to carry out airstrikes to destroy the Boko Haram units. So they found them in the swamps, and we found them with air surveillance, and we're destroying them with air power, and we're not engaging them, too readily with this sort of stuff. And you can see we've damaged them there. So that's that, really. I'm just a bit cautious about. That's the swamp there, isn't it? This is just bush. An exchange. Wow. So anyway, that's that. For the time being, because I don't want to spend too much more time thinking about it. I'm just trying to think of whether I've covered everything. But this is surveillance operations now, sort of partially done. There's going to be a bit of tweaking, but I think that the surveillance operations are quite interesting because they, to some extent, give you a certain degree of almost solo play. I mean, you can almost play because A, you don't know where they are, and B, you've got to figure out the right strategy. I think at the end of the day, it would get, it wouldn't become particularly challenging to keep doing that. But I think it's a certain sort of slightly different angle on the game as opposed to, say, both sides having all units visible. I mean, obviously, as the Boko Haram unit player, you can't actually move your units until the other players found them. I have actually sort of thought about that, but it's not really worth it. But you could sort of do them so they are actually visible when it's the Boko Haram player's turn. But that's fairly pointless if you're playing solo. But it's all developing and ongoing, so I'll leave it at that. But this is the culmination of the video I did yesterday, where I was sort of talking about what I was doing before I'd finished it. It was quite difficult and complex to do, actually, but not too complex. It's just sort of it's all fairly deep now. So anything that I do, especially on a new development, is just inherently complex. But anyway, I'll leave it at that, and hopefully you that will appeal to you. And if you sign up and play, you can sort of test it out. And I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.